Now hold on.
What's good people? I'm OBO, and in case you didn't know, I'm the G in LGBTQ, and you're watching It's Just Not Adding Up. So get in here and act like you got some sense. We're about to create some space. Okay, so let's just jump right in. Okay, so God, I'm going to tell you a little story about my journey.
Okay.
And then we're going to go with that. We're just going to go there.
All right.
Okay. So I felt different young. You guys have heard this story already. And when I was about 19 years old, it was time for me to act on my sexual desires.
Okay.
And I was a person who loved church, who loves God, all the things. And I had a very specific conversation with God, and I said, I will see you later. I know you can't honor me on this journey. I know I'm dishonoring you. I'm going to holler at you.
And was this because you were fulfilling your sexual desires in general, or because it was you were fulfilling your sexual desires with a man?
With a man.
Okay.
And I never felt convicted when I had sex with women.
Okay, so how old were you when you had sex with women?
I was a senior in high school, so I was 18.
Okay, yes. Cool. All right, I just wanted to, for context, you know what I mean? Because I think it's important to point out the fact that a lot of people didn't have problems like exploring, sexual desires with the opposite sex. And then when it was like, it's the same sex, then it was like, God, I know you won't be able to honor this. I'm out of here.
And so, literally. Literally. So for the next 3 years, we just didn't have really much conversation at all. And it was the loneliest I've ever felt in my life. Because that was my refuge. That was who I went to for everything, right? And so when I finally came back into the faith, I was still in shame, and I kind of wrestled with it, right? It was like, if I handle it this way, God, if I don't have a boyfriend, if I don't do this, if my proximity to straightness still remains the same, like all the things. And so fast forward a lot to now, people ask me often, how do I reconcile the two? Yeah. And even from a biblical perspective, and I always talk about context. And the first thing I point out is there's a lot of things that we do that are within context that is eliminated when it comes to man on man. One of my friends asked me recently, we're talking about this conversation. He's a cishet man. And he goes, we're talking, I said, so thou shalt not kill, right? And he was like, yeah. I was like, that's period, right? He's like, yeah, God said, thou shalt not kill, you should not kill anybody. Cool. Unless you're a cop. Unless you're a soldier. Unless it's self-defense. There's all these caveats. Yeah. Right? Yeah. But that same context is not allowed for when we talk about the biblical perspective of man on man. When we talk about rape, molestation, all the things that were going on. And it's like, for me, I have a hard time compartmentalizing or being bullied out of a religion by people who are refusing to understand.
Yeah. A lot of times, I've found that a lot of these people who are holding on to these things are holding on to a lot of ideals that were passed on to them through Black churches that were started on plantations. And so they're holding on to these respectability politics attached to certain things, be fruitful and multiply, which is attached to creating babies for the slave trade. A lot of things that were really, really embedded into the brains of African Americans, of enslaved Black people, to make them efficient products, still persist in church culture today. And so while my connection to God at this point is stronger than it's ever been in my entire life, my connection to church, it's the complete opposite. Because I had to break out of these harmful spaces, which were harmful because they were built on these traditions that were mostly created to, be harmful to Black people. Everything about church isn't bad. I've experienced some of the greatest moments of my life in church. And then I've experienced some moments that have scarred me for life. What I do know to be true is that God is faithful, that grace is sufficient, that the good work that was started in me, God is faithfully completing. Day
you want to shout?
It was just
you want to shout? Okay.
Those are like the truths that I know to be true. And so like if you get into semantics about, well, what about this and what about that? And it says this in the New Testament. I can't go to toe with you on semantics.
So where does God come in as it relates to your sexuality specifically? Like how does that conversation go?
My favorite scripture, Psalm 139:14. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. And David is believed to be the writer of Psalms, or one of the writers of Psalms. And David is called the man who was after God's own heart in the Bible, but he also like slept with this woman who was married, ordered for her husband to be killed in battle. Like all these things, like all of these faults are also like put up against him. And so like I would look at the life of David and I would say, if this man is still historically called the man after God's own heart, after all of those things, then what is my relationship to sin? What is sin? How does God feel about sin? How does Christ and the work of Christ, resurrection of Christ, cover sin and all these things? And I was like, this is a lot. This is a lot. This is taking me out. God, who am I? And God said, you are you.
Ooh, speak.
And so I know for me, the work I create, the community I inspire, like all of those things are through the lens of my Blackness and my queerness. And so because my gift moves specifically through my Blackness and my queerness, I know that it is inherently divine.
Do you ever get asked, are you Black first, gay first, believer of God first? How do you answer those kinds of questions?
I am to you what you experience first. And so
Can we leave it there? Can we leave it there?
You know,
that's so good. I never even thought about it from that perspective.
Well, because I see all three as equally divine, right? So I know that there's those things exist in me so that I can be of service in different spaces. So I don't have to, I see them all as divine. And I don't see one as being more divine as the other. And the thing is, for so long, we've had to compartmentalize who we are in order to exist in church. But if the presence of the Lord is everywhere, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty, then I should not have to compartmentalize who I am. And God is not requiring me to compartmentalize who I am in order for God to use me.
So what advice would you give to someone who may have felt or may still feel like there's no space for a relationship with God while being gay?
I would say for me, I've found once I started owning my queerness, I had to reapproach my human relationships. My relationships, you know, hey homegirl, you got a problem with me wearing these heels or these nails or this bag, or are we still cool? Hey parents, does this make you feel uncomfortable? Are we, you know what I mean? Like I had to like gauge, I had to reassess all of my relationships once I came into the full ownership of my Blackness and my queerness and the divinity of the two. The same way, you have to reshape your relationship with God, because the thing is, you only know God through all of these harmful spaces. So if you do believe that your Blackness and your queerness are divine, then those things can exist in the presence of God. And once you start communicating with God in that way, you see God affirm you in that way. The voices that you're hearing are not God. The voices that you're hearing are of people that have been in spaces that you equate with God and have been in positions that you equate with God, and they've abused those spaces and abused those positions.
I think it's hard for people sometimes to identify which is which.
Yeah, for sure.
Even when it comes to identifying the voice of God.
Yeah.
Is this me supplying myself with what I need to do what I want, or is this what God wants for me?
Who does it serve? It's always the litmus test.
Even for our relationship with God, because to your point, you had so many people tell us there's no room in heaven for you. There's no space for you in the church outside of the choir. There's no there's no space for you in church in your fullness. Because there's space for us in church. If we want to get there's space for us in church, right? But there's not a lot of space for us in our fullness. And I often think about how we have compartmentalized survival.
Yeah.
Where a lot of us have decided that as long as we don't say anything, I can be comfortable here. And a lot of our families have set up life that way, right? As long as you, even when they talk about you behind your back, talk about you to their sisters and their aunts and their cousins, everybody's talking about you being gay, everybody's talking about you being the things, but as long as you out of your mouth never proclaim to be, we can elephant the room and then we can go with our lives.
Yeah.
But the second we own it, I think it feels like, what am I then saying? Who am I rejecting? And a lot of times I think we're rejecting ourselves.
Yeah.
And so on that journey to maintaining faith, I think what makes it even more convoluted is you can't throw all of it away because a lot of who God is, you were given.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've seen people say, well, screw God altogether because I was given God by people who were negative, and so forget God. But it's like, I want to keep some of the God because some of that person who you described was the person who has kept me.
Yeah.
But how?
I think it's a daily process.
It's a minutely process.
It is like, seriously. It's like, somebody told me one time, it was a friend of mine who I had met at church.
Yeah.
We were on the praise team together. And I was just like in this cycle of a really bad relationship just happening over and over, like breaking up with that person, getting back with that person, breaking up with, and that person and I are friends now, but it was just not a healthy space. And the person I was on a person with, he was like, you know, Victor, I watch you apply faith in every other area of your life except for your relationships. And that's when I said, well, if I want the fruit of my faith to manifest itself in every area of my life, then I have to activate the same faith in every area of my life. And I got to figure out how to do it.
Do you recommend people defending their faith? I feel like often for me being I came out of the closet in 2019, and that was when I finally had the opportunity to find community. But I will say it was tough finding community of spiritually led gay men at the time. And so I tried to maintain the community I had with my cishet friends. However, they had their own misinformation they've been given. Yeah. And so it was hard for me to find that community. How do you, like, what are your suggestions, or what are your, like, do you have anything about people who are looking for that within the gay space or queer space?
For me, I lean on my other friends, like, who believe in the way that I believe and who have had, journeys similar to mine. The Bible does say, like, forsake not the sibling of the brethren, but that brethren or that sibling space does not have to be within the four walls of the church. I'm not a person that goes around like defending my faith. I am a person that is, I like to think, an example of my faith. And so when you see me and when you see what I do and when you see how my life is fruitful, you're seeing the fruit of my faith. So I don't have to
defend the thing.
Wave a Jesus flag around, because I am a friend of God and I know that to be true and I live as such. And that's through joy, that's through grace, that's through radical gratitude, that's through love. And I think a lot of people want to get caught up on the things that you can't do, but nobody wants to get caught up in the things that you can do. You can love someone exponentially. You can extend grace exponentially. You can be joyful radically, and grateful radically. But so much of Black church culture has been rooted in trauma.
Because of that trauma, a lot of people spend their time like with their gloves on, so much so that you can't get into self and build your own personal relationship. Because even for myself, I tweet about God. I'm vocal about God. I mean, God uses me in many ways. I think God uses all his children in many ways. Yeah. But because of that, there are people who are like, well, how are you talking about God and you like men? And so now I'm like, well, let me put my gloves on.
Well, but see, the thing there is, that's not for me to figure it out. I've already figured that out. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's on you to figure out. I'm not trying to, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to convince you that my Blackness and my queerness is divine. When you see my life, I lost my brother in 2008. I lost two friends between 15 and 18. I lost my grandparents 2018, 2019, 2020. I've been in terrible relationships. I have been in verbally abusive situations, sexually abusive situations, physically abusive situations. And literally, I know that the reason that I'm still here is because God has a plan for my life. I don't need to convince anybody of that. My mere presence is proof. And as long as I keep moving through the world as I do, the thing is, when we censor ourselves, that limits the God that people can see through us. But when we, with discernment and with, intentionality, reveal every layer of ourselves, it shows people how expansive God is. Because then they say, I went to the deviant party and I was like, and then God was like, go. Like, what? You know who you are. You know what you're going to do. You know what you're not going to do. Go to the party. Go to the party. I get my little look made, custom. Shout out to MDiggs. And I'm there, and a friend of mine from high school, a cishet woman, DMs me and she says, I was just scrolling down your timeline, showing my child just what Black queer joy looks like. And I had to cover up your penis on the pink picture. But because I only did it because I'm teaching her about private parts right now. And she's liable to say anything in public. And it's it wasn't why are you doing that? Why are you there? What are you doing? It was still a part of the learning journey. And it's I'm not suppressing myself no more. My Blackness is divine, my queerness is divine, and I deserve a love that sets the world on fire. If you don't believe that to be true, that's on you, girl.
You didn't have to come in here and preach like this.
This
wasn't what this. Hold on, now, Victor. Hold on
Now hold on.
I'm just,
Victor. Why would you come in here and do that like that? I'm telling you because I know there's so many people, including myself, at a really real point in my life where I didn't know. But I think a lot of that was rooted in my own shame. And that affected my relationship with God.
Yeah.
My own, I shouldn't be, I can't be, I'm not, I don't need to, you shouldn't go. All those kinds of things. And that kind of language and that self-talk got in the way of me and God's relationship.
Yeah.
And when I finally, and people think I came out with this series, and I came out a little bit before, but when God told me to do this, and which is even crazy for some people to understand, right? It's but God told me, I need you to bring your other brothers with you. I need you to get this up out of you. I have an assignment over your life. I need you to get this done. And it's been an interesting journey because there was a time in my life where I thought God had no room for me because of the way that God made me.
Yeah.
Which makes zero sense to me today. But made a bunch of sense to me at one point of life.
And it's the only truth that's being reinforced. You're not getting any reinforcement of the actual truth. The only reinforcement, I got asked, my mom asked me to share with someone just what it's been like, what my experiences are and everything. And I was I just really think it's difficult for me to do that at your request if we've been through some moments where you have not affirmed the divinity of my Blackness and my Blackness, yes. My queerness, what is that? What even is queerness? I thought you were gay. Well, you know what I mean? All these things, it's but you're asking me to operate in my gift. And the only connection that I have to this person who you want me to minister to is that we are both Black and queer. So you cannot tell me that those are not conduits for my spiritual gifts. I was on stage with Tamar. We were doing the Welcome to the Dungeon tour, which I led the prayer before every show. And Candy was she posted a video, and she was like, Victor, people are in the comments I can't believe y'all are praying. I don't know who y'all praying to before y'all go on stage and do that. I said, baby, what we know is that this space is about freedom. This is a space for people to feel safe and brave in freedom.
And I think that's the confidence piece that a lot of people lack. Because there is an air of confidence that says, even the confidence in God, for me to know that what I heard was God. what I'm doing is divine.
Yeah.
Where I'm going has a purpose.
Yeah.
And all those things, and that didn't get canceled out because I'm queer, and it also didn't get canceled out because I acted on my queerness. We have this misbelief that if I reject self enough, God will love me.
And the thing is, things are going awry in whatever way they are, or whatever degree they are in your life, is because you're rejecting yourself. You are your treasure. Like,
you're not going to keep preaching at me.
I will say this: the more I owned who I was,
yes, sir,
the more,
yes, sir,
my blackness and my divinity, my gifts made room for me.
Yes, sir.
Now, this is biblical. These are spiritual laws. This is wherever you want to place it. But I can't deny that those are gifts.
And I also think the tough part is a lot of, especially men, grew up idolizing their fathers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the information that you need to reject was given to you by your father.
Yeah.
And so it often feels like you're rejecting your father.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's these moments where I would literally heard some friends, and I'm like, not to be whatever, what your dad said was wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And my dad was also my pastor. Like, you know what I mean? Like, my dad's a pastor. Like, when my parents found out I had a boyfriend, I was put on punishment and I could not sing on the praise team for a month until it was time for revival. And then, we need to, or until praise and worship just went awry too many times, or until somebody was visiting and you wanted a special dance. I was like, and so what started happening, the older I got and the more aware I became, I said, I have a sensitivity connected to my queerness, which helps me remove the ego in these spaces, and the spirit can move through me. If I was just super hetero honcho, I wouldn't be able to remove my ego, and that's how a lot of the abuse that happens in churches happens.
For sure.
You know what I mean? And it's like, and so what I started realizing was, okay, if I can't be, and mind you, I started attending a church here, Impact Church, which is for everybody. All are welcome and all are worthy.
Pastor Olu, right?
Pastor Olu.
Okay.
Shout out to Pastor Olu. You know what I mean? And it really affirmed me. I said, this is a church where I could get married. I could drop my kids off at the nursery. And there will be straight parents and queer parents and single parents and adopted parents and we're all committed to the holistic salvation of our children. And I said, boom.
That's so good.
I'm here.
So
I know.
No.
I know.
No, listen. I want you to, I'm not even closing this out. You close this out. I want you to just say to a specific person right now who is just in that interim space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
Just in that where you don't necessarily feel forgotten about, but you don't know how to cultivate.
Yeah.
Even if you want to pray over us, listen. But anyways, I'm just saying, like in this moment, like just tell us something.
During the pandemic, I gotten out of a relationship. I was really bad breakup. I moved back in with my parents, and I was like, God, what is happening?
Yeah.
Like, I was about to turn 35. The world shut down. All my gigs were canceled. Like, I was just like, what is happening? And God just like wouldn't say anything. And what I started realizing was like, there were some key truths about myself that I was refusing to believe. I was refusing to believe my worth. I was refusing to believe the power of my giftedness. I was refusing to believe these things because dogma, damnation, stigma, shame, all those things were bearing it. And God was like, start digging. Just start digging. And as I started throwing out all those things that people had said, all those fears that were literally just connected to like things that people had said to me that I just held on to, I discovered that I deserve three things. I deserve to live, I deserve to love, I deserve to dance. I deserve to exist freely and completely in who God created me to be, how God created me fearfully and wonderfully. I deserve to share that fullness with someone in exchange for their fullness, for us to grow together. And I deserve to experience joy that is so full and so electric that my body reacts to it. And so for anybody who feels like, you know, I don't know how God feels about me, I don't know, like, if this is right. God loves you and believes that truly, beyond any shadow of a doubt, you deserve to live, you deserve to love, you deserve to dance. And if you can't remember anything else, choose every day to live, to love, to dance. If that loving is simply loving yourself, choose every day to live, to love, and to dance. Good days, bad days. But I promise you, the more you do it and the more you make that daily choice, the more you will see yourself the way that God sees you. And that is fearfully and wonderfully made.
Keep creating space. Peace. Period. That was so freaking good.